One night, my family had gone to my brother's baseball game, leaving me alone in the house. I wasn't interested in sports, so I opted to play video games. As I sat in my room, I heard faint knocking downstairs, which was odd because we had a doorbell. Initially, I assumed it might have been a case of mistaken identity, but when the knocking persisted on the back door, I decided to investigate. I peered through the window but couldn't see anything. I walked down the hall and found an older man with a gray beard and flannel shirt standing on our back porch. He tried to persuade me to let him in, but something in his eyes made me feel uneasy, so I refused. He seemed like an ordinary person, but I suspected he was hiding something sinister. Suddenly, he began to pound on the door, attempting to break it down. Terrified, I raced back upstairs to my dad's office and locked the door. The man continued to try to break the door down, and I could hear him grunting and the wood splintering. I managed to dial 911, but my voice trembled with fear as I spoke to the operator. The police arrived quickly, but the man had already fled. When my parents returned home, they were relieved to hear what had happened. They were scared for my safety, but relieved that I had managed to protect myself. The perpetrator was caught and arrested the following day. This harrowing experience made me acutely aware of the potential danger lurking in unexpected places. I spent a sleepless night, on edge at every creak, and groaned the housemaid, replaying the man's attempts to break in. I couldn't comprehend why he had singled out my house, and the police claimed he was just a transient. But I remained skeptical. I decided to take matters into my own hands and conduct some research on my attacker. As I delved into his past, I discovered a criminal record consisting mostly of minor offenses, but also some more serious crimes. Something about his attack felt too targeted and personal. I searched for news articles and unearthed a connection between the man and my family. He had held up a local business, just a few blocks from my house, and my mother had witnessed the crime. The realization was a shock. The man had targeted my home as revenge for being caught and arrested, putting my family in grave danger because of a random act of violence from years ago. As soon as I discovered the connection between the attacker and my family, I promptly contacted the police and shared my findings. They were taken aback and promised to investigate further and provide extra protection for us. However, the damage had already been done. My family and I were left to grapple with the aftermath of the assault. We were constantly vigilant, paranoid that the perpetrator might return for revenge. To feel safer, my parents opted to install a security system, and we were more careful about who we let into our home. We also carried pepper spray, and I downloaded a panic button app on my phone. The incident had a profound effect on me. I began to have difficulty sleeping, and I would repeatedly check the window locks before going to bed. Despite my parents' attempts to reassure me that we were secure and that the perpetrator was in police custody, the fear persisted. Several months have passed since the ordeal, and while the fear has diminished, it still lurks in the back of my mind. This experience has taught me never to let my guard down and always to trust my instincts. It was a dark and stormy night, the kind that evokes scenes from an old horror movie. I was a 10-year-old boy, left alone at home while my parents were out of town. I had pleaded with them to allow me to stay alone, promising to be responsible and not break any rules. As the night progressed, however, I began to regret my decision. The wind howled outside, and the rain beat relentlessly against the windows. I tried to keep myself busy by watching TV, but every time a commercial break came on, I heard strange noises from outside. I attempted to convince myself that it was just the wind, but the feeling of being watched was too intense to shake. I decided to retire early, hoping that the storm would pass and I would sleep through the night. Climbing into bed, I pulled the covers over my chin, but I sensed that someone was in the house with me. I heard strange whispers and footsteps. When I turned on the light, no one was there. I tried to rationalize that it was my imagination, but the feeling of being watched was overpowering. I was convinced that someone was just outside my door, so I tried to remain calm, although my heart was pounding in my chest. I was too afraid to move or even breathe. As I was on the verge of dozing off, I heard a sound that sent shivers down my spine. It was the sound of someone attempting to turn the doorknob. I lay there frozen as the doorknob slowly turned and the door creaked open. I shut my eyes tightly, hoping that by not seeing anything, I would be invisible to whatever was making those slow, deliberate footsteps that were getting closer and closer to my bed. But then I heard them, and I couldn't bear it any longer. I shot up in bed and screamed, "Who's there?" There was no response. The footsteps ceased, and the door slammed shut with a loud bang. I sat there trembling for what felt like hours, too scared to move or investigate. In the morning, I recounted the strange noises and footsteps to my parents, but they dismissed it as my imagination running wild. They reasoned that the storm had caused the house to creak and that I must have been dreaming. However, I knew what I had heard, and I firmly believed that there was someone or something watching me that night. From then on, I never felt truly alone. I would hear peculiar noises and catch fleeting glimpses of shadows moving in the corners of my eyes. I never discovered who or what it was that visited me that night, and although everyone thought it was just my imagination, I knew it was real. I spent my childhood in a typical suburban neighborhood, with rows of identical houses boasting pristine lawns and white picket fences. My closest friend was a boy named Joey, a year older than me, who always got into trouble, but whose charismatic and adventurous personality drew me to him. One evening, while I was home alone, Joey showed up at my doorstep with two older boys, Dave and Colin, who appeared to be a few years older than him. Despite feeling uneasy about their presence, I allowed them in, hoping to fit in with the older crowd. Once inside, Dave and Colin helped themselves to snacks and lounged on my couch while I tried to make conversation with them, but they seemed disinterested and instead began to argue. Their voices grew louder, and suddenly, Dave pulled out a knife, causing me to freeze in shock. Dave and Colin started fighting, rolling around on my living room floor, and I could see blood but wasn't sure whose it was. Terrified and unsure of what to do, I thought things couldn't get any worse until Joey intervened, disarming Dave and helping me kick them both out of the house. However, they refused to seek medical attention or involve the authorities, leaving me to clean up the mess and cope with the fear and confusion. I scrubbed the bloodstains from the floor, trying to restore my living room to order. I feared my parents would find out and punish me, but more importantly, I realized the danger of allowing anyone into my life without considering their character. From that day on, I learned to choose my friends more carefully and never to put myself in such a dangerous situation again. After finishing school one day, I returned home to an empty house on a beautiful spring day. Given the negligible crime rate in my small town, I left the main door ajar while keeping the screen door shut and unlocked. I proceeded to leash my dog in the backyard and then went back inside, plopping down on the living room carpet to watch TV. During a commercial break, the screen suddenly went blank, and as I turned to investigate, I caught sight of a large figure looming behind me. Panic-stricken, my heart sank, my throat tightened, and my anxiety skyrocketed, making it difficult to breathe. Though the sighting lasted only a few seconds, my mind raced through a series of thoughts. Why hadn't my dog barked at the intruder? He was tied up outside. With my head half turned towards the figure, I realized that it wasn't a person but a black animal. At this point, I feared that a bear had made its way into my home and was about to attack me. My heart thumped violently in my chest, but as I looked closer, I realized with immense relief that it was my neighbor's dog. Panting and grinning like a puppy, he had wandered in through the unlatched screen door. I walked him back to my neighbor's house, and we had a good laugh about the incident. However, the moment of terror stayed with me, and I always made sure to latch the screen door tightly after that. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and sharing it to support me. The best is yet to come.